Hello, my name is Dr. Daphne Buchanan, and I'm your host of Echoes of Embracing Love. This podcast is going to be based on the workings of Dr. Charles Dean, the renowned relationship coach who has been working on a reboot of his popular series, Embracing Love, that he has done for over 20 years. He has done a phenomenal job of helping people who are in crisis in their relationships. He has identified strategies and he's identified traumas and things that have allowed people to heal. He has figured out ways to get people to come together and really work on themselves, work with each other to be able to come to some consensus in their relationships, to build on where they are and to flourish. Now, I have listened to his podcast, and in the podcast, I have sometimes felt that some of the comments were unfair to women. And that is just not in Dr. Dean's podcast. I have listened to men on TikTok, men on Facebook, and sometimes I felt that, some of what they're saying is practically women bashing. I really have, and I say those things in the moment that I don't agree with what they're saying, or we agree to disagree. Now, my choice to do the retrospective of Dr. Charles Dean's Embracing Love gives me the opportunity to really do some self-reflection with myself and to also really look at his work and apply it to the working theory of, do women really do these things, or are we at a place of, let's really think about it. Let's really focus on reality. Let's really focus on, do we really need to do things this way? Is there another way? And just to really think about the stories of our lives, because I want to be respectful to his work. And as well as being respectful to his work, I really want to look at my life, look at things that I know that have happened around me, and really be able to speak on if there could be other reasons. So tonight we're going to be working on his first reboot episode, which is called When Love Hurts. Now, in the When Love Hurts episode, he really digs into how love can hurt when people don't mean to hurt each other. And it talks about how, you really have to be willing to be involved in the relationship. You really have to be looking at all aspects and be willing to be in it. So those are some of the things that we really want to look at, we really want to delve into, to make sure that we're understanding his concepts, and not only understanding his concepts, but identifying if we agree, if we disagree, or if we can agree to disagree, because sometimes that's all we can do. And again, I feel like it's from a man's perspective. And of course, with me doing this, and if you have not seen his episode, you can always go to loveradionetwork.com. The episodes are free, and just go to his podcast and you can find his episode under Embracing Love When Love Hurts. That is the episode that we're going to be discussing in this podcast. So in When Love Hurts, he discusses the unspoken side of love, the pain, the disappointment, and the emotional wounds that sometimes come from the very people that we hold closest. So I think that with love, there's always going to be hurt because life lives. There's no perfect love. I think that the way love grows is through those trials and those tribulations. And that's when love becomes its most potent. When you can stand for each other, even when it's hard. And love becomes its most precious when you feel like someone is fighting for you. Even when you're at your worst. When someone's fighting for you. So one of the things that I really felt like I don't want to say I didn't understand. I want to say that I couldn't get with the analogy that he chose to use. The analogy was that love or a relationship was similar to an illness, okay? And that sometimes the illness can have symptoms. And if we don't take care of the symptoms, it could become more catastrophic. Because those symptoms then turn into a condition. And that condition can then turn to death if it's not treated. Now, this is my perception. And it's my perception because when we think of illnesses, I don't think of a common cold as an illness. I don't think of, the flu as an illness. I think of that as like, something that people just get. When people say illness, my heart stops. Because illness to me is serious. Illness to me is cancer. Illness to me is someone has had a heart attack. Someone has had a stroke. It is something that is a condition that can be upgraded to something that puts your life at risk. Now, other people may think differently, but that's how I feel. I think it is a illness as something that can take us out. Okay? So I never want to feel that my relationship is something that's going to take me out. I never want to feel that way. So when I think about what can be some symptoms that are in a relationship, a lack of communication, that can be a symptom. You have partners who are not communicating well. It could be wait. I need you to tell me what's wrong. But the partner is saying, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. But you've got this partner over here who knows there's something wrong because their partner is behaving differently. I am famous for saying, I'm fine, when I'm really not. And that is because as a non-confrontational person, I don't always want to be the one who has the problem. I don't always want to share my inner thoughts because sometimes it may not be important that I share it. It may be important that I work through it on my own, but it may not be important that I share it with my spouse or my person. Because sometimes I can work it through on my own and figure out that, hey, this is just not that important. It's just really not. But if you have that kind of supportive and loving person that wants to know every thought that's in your head, you make them feel like you don't trust them with the thoughts that you have in your head. So you have to learn to know your partner. So is that a symptom? Is that one of the symptoms that Dr. Dean is talking about when he says symptoms? Because that's a lack of communication. You know, there are other things that can be considered to be a symptom. A symptom of the illness that he's talking about, could it be that maybe a couple is having difficulty with intimacy? Because maybe one of them does not know what intimacy is, or maybe neither of them feel that intimacy is the same thing. Maybe one of them feels like intimacy is like cuddling up together and that's it. But maybe the other feels like intimacy is having soft conversations, holding hands, doing things together inside and outside the house. How do you know? Because it goes back to communication. So communication is still the symptom. Because now they're not communicating in any capacity to make sure that their person is okay. It's important to check in. You have to check in. You have to say, babe, are you okay? Is our relationship okay? Is there anything that you feel that we need to be doing to be okay? And that means the male should be checking in. The female should be checking in. If it's the same sex relationship, you need to be checking in, because that's the only way that you're going to figure out if you have symptoms. You have to check in, just like you're going to a doctor's appointment. If we're gonna call it a symptom, if we're gonna call it a illness, then you got to check in. You got to go for a checkup. Babe, are we okay? Is there anything that we can do to, is there anything we need to do to make this better? Are we good? You gotta check in. I feel like, there are times when relationships are not feeling like they're up. And sometimes we get bored with each other. That is a relationship. Nobody wants to be bored all the time. But I will say that my relationship, I don't feel bored. I just feel companionship. I feel like we are okay. We can sit quietly in a room and be okay in a room together. And I don't feel bored. We can have conversations and it's great. But sometimes it has to be a check-in to see if, are you okay with us doing these things? Do you need to go out? Do you need more? Because if you don't check in, you don't know. Because everybody needs something. And if you don't check in to see what that something is, you can't work through it. So when you talk about symptoms and a relationship being similar to an illness, you have to do the work so that the illness can be manageable, so you don't go into a condition, because a condition can be something that you can't come back from, because some conditions can become terminal, and that is not where we want our relationships to go. So as he talked about the symptoms, he then said once these symptoms began to grow and exasperate, he talked about how in these moments, people began to reflect on their relationship and began to wonder, is this even the person that I'm supposed to be with when all of these things are going on? These things are the struggles of a relationship. So when you get to one challenge and one hurdle, are you then saying, is this even the person I'm supposed to be with? Are you going to fight for your relationship? Or are you just going to figure out, oh, this must not be the person I'm supposed to be with because this shouldn't be this hard? Because I've been there. I've been like, look, it should not be this hard. No, it shouldn't be this hard. And that is when you have to ask yourself, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because I've been in relationships that I've realized that maybe I wanted someone, but they didn't necessarily want me. Maybe they didn't want me. And when you realize that, you have that hurt, you have that pride, and you have to decide, well, what is it? What is it about me? Then you have to know that it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them. And you have to believe them the first time when they show you. If they show you that you are an option, if they show you that there are more things that are important or more important than you, it may be time to take a step back. Not really to say, is this the person I'm supposed to be with? But maybe to say, let me check in with this person and have that clarifying conversation. Is this where we need to be? Is this what we want? Because if it's not, because you're already asking questions. Daphne's already asking questions like, is this the person I'm supposed to be with? Because I'm feeling like needy. I'm feeling lonely. You shouldn't be in a relationship feeling lonely. If you're in a relationship feeling lonely, which is another symptom, then that is a problem. Because I'm not saying, are you dating someone and feeling lonely? Because dating and a relationship are two different things. Dating, you're going out with someone, there's no commitment, you're just dating someone. I have been very guilty of dating someone and just dating one person and feeling like I have to be loyal to them and not dating other people, because that's how I'm made. That's how I'm made. That's my philosophy. If I date, I'm dating one person. If I'm involved with someone, I'm going to be involved with one person. But there's other people who can date many people and be okay with that. I'm just not one of them. But that person that I'm with may be that person. They may be able to date more than just me and be okay. That's why those clarifying conversations are so important, because your points of view may be very different. And then we get into the trauma that is talked about, which is also a symptom. People have been hurt. People have been devastated by things that have happened in their childhood, that have been happening in past relationships, that make you feel like you can't trust people, or you feel like you have healed from things that have happened in the past, and things happen that remind you of them, and suddenly you're at that crossroad of feeling like, should I be paying attention to this stuff? Should it be something that I'm paying attention to? Because I've been here before. Should I be paying attention to this? So it gets into where Dr. Dean, in his discussion, talked about triggers and trauma and how people will blame you for things that they've never done, your partner's never done, because of what happened in your past. Now, do I believe that happens? Absolutely, I do. I believe some people are so hurt and so damaged sometimes because they've stayed in it so long. They stayed in it longer than they needed to, and there is irreparable damage. There can be no trust. I believe it happens. I 110%. I believe it does. Now, do I believe people can heal when they're hurt that badly? I think that they can make it manageable. I think they'll backslide. I think that is to be expected. I think it should be shared with their partner. I think backslides should be expected. I think their partner should expect it. But if their partner knows about it, how should you operate? If you know that your partner has been faced with infidelities and you go through these things with her, you've committed to her, but then you exhibit behaviors that could possibly make her feel like you're doing those things, how do you expect her not to feel triggered? You know, you have to be aware of your actions, and she has to be aware of her actions, not to paint you with the same brush, because it's a slippery slope. She can't blame you for being who you are, yet you have to have a healthy respect for who she is. Because we always say this, your experiences make you who you are. And there was something that attracted you to each other, and her experiences made her who she is. Your experiences made you who you are. And I think when you love somebody, you really love somebody, you accept them for who they are. But you have to talk about those non-negotiables, those things you will not accept, those things you will not deal with. And I think that is part of dealing with the symptoms. I think that is part of the treatment of the condition. Being able to acknowledge that, yes, I may have triggers, but it does not drive my life. So yes, I might see some things that make me feel a certain way, but I'm not going to let it drive my relationship. That is a choice. If you allow your past to drive how you live, how you love, that is a choice. You cannot. But you also have to recognize if your responses are driven by other things. If your responses are driven by anxiety, if your responses are driven by someone always attacking you got to be able to recognize when you're being attacked. If there are trigger words, if there are behaviors that trigger you, goes back to the main symptom, communication. You can't be fearful of communication. However, the downside of communication is the messenger can always be the target. Because sometimes the people you have to communicate with don't like what you have to say. Especially if it's about them. Sharing with someone how they affect you sometimes is not a good thing, because they're not open to that, because they don't feel like they're that way. And if you're the only one that's saying it and they feel like you're the only one that's saying it, it makes you not want to say anything. So you have to really think about what it is you're saying, why you're saying it, and if it's important. Because all of those things can affect those triggers. They can affect those things that are in that person's life that they have dealt with in the past. Nobody wants to feel like they're living in the past. But they also don't want somebody to tell them they're living in the past all the time. Especially when you feel like you've grown. I know lots of people who have worked on themselves. And for the first, second, and third time have said, hey, I'm so proud of myself. You know, I feel like I've grown. I feel like I've worked on myself. I feel like I've just come to this place of acceptance of what has happened to me. You know, I'm not going to be perfect, but I feel like I've come to this place of acceptance. So when you have someone that focuses on the negative parts of you without praising those parts that you've grown in, it's going to always be something that you have to work on. And so there was this part where Dr. Dean was speaking on focusing on triggers and figuring out what those triggers are, because both people can have those things. Both people can have triggers, but you got to determine if you want to fight for the relationship. And while doing that, the goal is to have a healthy relationship. Working on yourself should not be ignored. Shouldn't be. But to know that you should continue to build on yourself and make progress is necessary. Because you have to be able to grow. Personal growth is necessary for everyone. If you have people in your life who say they don't need to change and they don't care what nobody says, they're fine the way they are, run. Run. Anybody who feels like they don't have any room for personal growth, run. God did not put us here to be one way. He didn't put us here to stay rooted in the mindsets that we have. He put us here to evolve mentally, physically, spiritually, in any directions that we choose. But the growth has to be there. And all of that goes into what Dr. Neal, goodness gracious, I said Dr. Neal. Let me just tell you who Dr. Neal is, because Dr. Dean is who I'm discussing, but Dr. Neal is my therapist. So let me say this. Dr. Dean is a wonderful relationship coach. But for me, I decided a long time ago that I needed an outlet. I needed an outlet. I personally needed an outlet. I needed someone I could go to. I could say whatever I wanted to say to them, and it was going to be okay. And that person would tell me, girl, you sound ridiculous. You sound ridiculous. Sometimes she'll laugh at me and she'll say, girl, she said, girl, you sound like a middle schooler. Or she would be honest with me. That's what you need. You need to go in. Look, I got a one earring, y'all. Look at that craziness. You need somebody who will say, you sound ridiculous. You sound like a middle schooler. Because sometimes, I'll be frank. I'm selfish. I'm selfish about my relationship. I'm so selfish about my relationship that sometimes I make myself mad. But guess why I'm selfish about my relationship? Because I love him that much. I'm selfish about my relationship because I want him to know I love him that much. If your person does not know that you love them, that you're there for them, you want them to be healthy, happy, and know that you are there 110%. Nothing comes before them, nothing comes after them. He knows, my children, he knows my grandchildren, but guess what? When I show up, he shows up. That's love. It's not perfect, but I'm selfish about the person that I love. Real selfish. I don't have a problem admitting it. I'll tell it to anybody. I'll tell it to his mom. I tell it to his sisters. I tell it to his brother. I tell it to anybody who asks. I'm selfish about the person that I love. So selfish. I would be with him 24/7 if I could. I don't want to be, but if I could, I would be. Because I'm grown enough and adult enough to know we need separate time. Because too much time is too much time. Like, it's just too much time. We need separation. We need some time apart. Which is why he has his job, I have my job. We got time apart. But knowing that the person who loves you, knowing you're not an option, you're a priority, knowing that your other can walk away from you and you're the woman, knowing when he walks away from me, a woman might be attractive, but he has to make the move. She can be as attractive as she wants to be, but he got to be attracted. I had to learn the difference. I had to learn the difference. And so when people invest in each other, there's no need to be jealous because an attractive woman comes around your man. There's no need to be triggered because the man before cheated on you. There's no need to be upset because someone made you an option and not a priority. Because the person in your life has made it to where you don't have to feel that way. Does that mean you're not going to backslide? Absolutely not. Everybody does. Everybody does. But does that mean you have to always do that? It absolutely does not. Absolutely does not. So, Dr. Dean often talked about, the mistakes that people make while determining a life full of pain is not always the best. It may hamper your progress. We can't always hopper on our childhood trauma. We can't always stick to the trauma that we had in a relationship. Because at some point, guys, it becomes choices we make. You know, the reason she did this is because this happened. The reason he did this is because this happened. You got to give them some grace. I'm all about giving people grace. I'm all about being understanding. But what everybody has to understand is, at some point, it becomes about choices. Plain and simple. Choices. You choose to make your significant other feel uncomfortable. You choose to make your significant other feel as if you don't want to communicate with them properly. You choose to misunderstand the words of your partner because you don't ask clarifying questions. Now, if your partner gets upset when you ask clarifying questions, that is their choice. And you have to understand that, hey, I'm just asking the question. Now, you're getting upset with me because I'm asking the question. I don't know where to go with you with that. I don't know where else you want me to go. Because to fight for your relationship means you have to ask those questions, whether he is mad or not. If you want your relationship, you cannot let your insecurities eat you up inside. Because the most confident person in the world can be eaten up by the insecurities. It only takes one thread of insecurity. It only takes one thread. And then it gets pulled, and it gets pulled, and it gets pulled, and it gets pulled. That insecurity may not have been your biggest insecurity. But because of how you communicate, it can be. Something that was never an issue before can now become an issue. It can now become a symptom. It may not have anything to do with your past trauma. It may have nothing to do with your childhood trauma. But it is a choice. Because I will honestly say, sometimes I fear saying some things. I do. I have a fear of sometimes saying, maybe we can do this way. Or maybe we can do something differently. And that fear comes from, maybe he'll take it the wrong way. Maybe he'll take it like, I don't like what we're doing. That's not what I'm saying. Because I feel like, I may feel like we need to do something different because I'm not spontaneous enough. I'm not engaging enough. Has nothing to do with him, but has everything to do with me. But I also recognize it can't always be about me. So those are the things we have to learn to do. We have to learn to be unselfish. We have to learn to communicate properly. We really have to think about what we say. And everything can't be a confrontation. Everything can't be an argument. Some things just have to be pillow talk. Sometimes it just has to be pillow talk, babe. We got to talk about some stuff. And just be willing to, some people have to be willing to be softer. Just be softer. And because some people feel like, I just say what I got to say. And if you don't like it, you just don't like it. Well, no. That's not going to get you what you want. That vinegar is not going to get you what you want. Now, that honey might pull you a whole lot of things, but that vinegar may not get you what you want, okay? So, there's always a compromise. There's always a way to pull things out of people. So, you have to really, really Think about it. So after we talk about determining this pain and thinking about these triggers that hurt people and how these walls get built up and how you can't get over these walls because there's so much hurt and there's so much resentment, then he expressed that there's the blame game. She blames him, he blames her. You know, we all know it takes two to create a conflict, though. It takes two. And in essence, both people feel the brunt of the accusations. I don't know how he feels. I know how I feel. I don't know how he feels. Until when? He communicates it with me. He doesn't know how I feel until I communicate it with him. I can't tell you anything until I know. Now, we share lots of things as couples, but we don't always share the things that have happened in our lives because we don't think to share everything. We don't share all of our traumas because we feel like we don't want to burden people with every single thing that has happened in our life. I have childhood trauma. I have relationship trauma. I have relationship trauma upon relationship trauma upon relationship trauma. But a lot of that trauma I brought up on myself. And some of it I can't even call it a trauma. I have to call it accepting accountability for putting myself in positions I should not have put myself into because I have a lack of trust. Or let me say this. I don't have a lack of trust for men anymore because I had somebody to show me that I don't have to. I don't have to paint men with the same brush. I can give someone a chance to show me that they're different. But am I supposed to lose my common sense when I do that? I'm not. If it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it might be a dang duck. Okay? But the way I figure out if it's not a duck is if I ask the question. Do I sit in a ball of anxiety and upset because I'm supposed to be afraid to ask the question? Because then the relationship becomes the illness. Then it becomes the illness. It becomes corrosive. It becomes the condition. And then may become terminal just on my side because I'm not communicating what I'm going through, what's happening. Communication, still the big symptom is communication. The main symptom, communication. Still communication. So then we get here and then we have the breakup. We have this breakup. These two people love each other. Hurt beyond what people can think. You know, we already thought about, should I be with this person? Maybe not. But you truly love each other. But what could have been the balm to all of this? The communication. Did you fight for each other? Was the fight there? Because I'm telling you, I am not going to be with somebody who's not willing to fight for me if I'm fighting for you tooth and nail. But when I look and you're not fighting for me, eventually, I'm not going to fight. I think every woman feels that way. I think every man feels that way. if you're not fighting for me, I'm not going to fight for you. And it just is what it is. But it goes back again to that C word. We're not communicating. Now, if you need to pull in a third party to help you communicate, if you need to go to therapy, if you need that relationship coach, get it. If you feel like your relationship is worth it, fight for it. If that person brings something to your life you've never had and you feel like you've never going to get it again, fight for your relationship. Do you just walk away? Now, if there's been dishonesty, if somebody's roped you into a relationship that there's a no-win situation, you have to accept the fact that that person may not be for you. And you have to walk away and you have to lick your wounds. But you cannot let one person make you feel like you cannot be happy with someone else. I did that. For many years, I chose be by myself. I'd rather be by myself than deal with some nonsense. Yes. A lot of people feel that way. I'd rather be by myself than deal with some nonsense. And that's what I did, guys. I'd rather be by myself than deal with some nonsense. Lay in my bed, binge watch some TV. I loved it until I didn't. Then I wanted to be with somebody. I wanted my one. I wanted my person, my one. I wanted to find my one. You know what I mean? The one. The one God had for me. The one that was going to give me what I never had. The one who was going to protect me. The one who was going to love me and only me. And was going to let me love him the way I needed to love him. I looked, honey. I dipped my toe in minty poos, honey. Nah, not like that. Not like that. But I am saying that, you talk to people. You say, hey, I'm interested. You give them the opportunity to say they're interested or they're not interested. You're not going to be heartbroken if somebody says they're not interested, right? You're not. You don't get involved that way. That is what dating is about. Dating is about, hey, I'm interested in you. Can we go on a date? I tried it. I tried it. And I tried it at a time, guys. I tried it at a time when I was like recovering from a life-altering type situation. And when you have walls built up from hurt, when you have walls built up because you made the wrong choices, you met the wrong men along the way, and that's why you've decided that you're not going to, you better off by yourself. You're thinking you're going to be by yourself, but you're going to go out there and risk it because you don't want to be by yourself. You're going to go and you're going to do the risk. So in doing those risks, that's what you have to do. You think you're going to do something different. I changed my mindset, which is what Dr. Dean recommends. He says, change your mindset. I had a fixed mindset where relationships were concerned. And Dr. Dean was like, no. If your mindset is that relationships aren't good, then that's what you're going to have. But if you open yourself up and your mindset It's like, you know, I will have a good relationship if I seek one. I will put positivity in the air. I will share my love with someone who is willing to share their love with me. Guys, you know, your mindset is everything. If it's toxic mindset, toxicity is going to come to you. You know, you have to be willing to open yourself up. And one thing that Dr. Dean talked about was tailor-made love. People felt like tailor-made love is just for you. Every relationship is not that. It's just not. You know, people don't want drama. They don't want games. They want people they could be different with because they're not healed. People feel like they want these relationships, but they're not healed. But in not being healed, you can be healed together. If you are so broken that you cannot get out of your own way, you have to find someone to help you build that. You have to. You have to be able to get out of your own way. You've got to change your mindset. And if you cannot do that on your own, I'm telling you, my years, and I'm telling you years of therapy that therapists told me I didn't need. I did, because I needed the outlet. I had stress in my life. I had a high stress job. I am an overthinker. I am a perfectionist. I am a overachiever. I am all these things that my brain would just run. And it might be my personal, it might be my professional, it might be all these things, but they're all jumbled up in my brain. And when you have that going on and you want to love somebody, you have no idea what all of that can do to your relationship. So a therapist could be a wonderful thing at all times. So it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be that person who was cheated on. It's okay to be that person who made relationship mistakes and caused yourself harm. It's okay, because guess what it did? It made me me. It made me know what it is that I want. Because at the end of the day, if you don't know what you want, that is a problem. You got to have what you don't want to know what you want. I have to say that. Because some people don't know what other people will do to break you. And I don't mean physical abuse. I don't mean verbal abuse. I don't mean just infidelity. Simple things of just making you an option. When you say that to people, sometimes they don't even know what you mean. I will never be someone's option again. And that's in daily life. And so, being someone's option for a woman, that could mean a man deciding to go out with his friends versus being with me. We've got plans. And he said, hey babe, the guys are coming over. Why don't you cook up something and we all hang out here? That's making me an option. Yes, you're home with me, but you've changed plans that we made for the masses. I'm now the option you didn't choose. And that's just one example. just believing that you can be loved and someone can love you with all your childhood trauma, with all your adult trauma, and all the challenges that you've had in your life. And that you both can grow and heal together with a growth mindset. Fixed mindsets can't get you anywhere. I can't do this because. I can't do it. I can't do it. No. I can do this because I want to be successful in a relationship. I can do this because I want to love and be loved. I can do this because I've met a man who loves me and protects me and shows me every day that is what he's going to do. That type of mindset will get you places that you have no idea you can be. Men, allow women to give you that. Now, I'm not saying all women don't do crazy, because we all know we can be the villain, ladies. There's women who can make some bad choices. Let me say that out loud, and let me say it again. Women can make horrible choices, just like men. But I feel that women who make those horrible choices have decided to act like men in their behaviors because that is what they've seen in their environment, and have decided nobody's going to treat me that way. I'm going to be just like them. I've seen lots of stuff. I have. But I will never do that because that's my choice. So that goes back to me stating that you can't blame it on trauma. You can't blame it all on childhood trauma. You can't blame it all on adult trauma. You have to recognize that it's about choices. And you make them. So once again, this is a retrospective of Echoes of Embracing Love, of the Embracing Love series by Dr. Charles Dean. You can watch his podcast on Love Radio Network. It is a free site. And then watch this one again after you're done to get another perspective, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give another perspective of what he's talking about. I wanted to be able to share with you just some different perspective, because men, Lord have mercy, they can say things in a way that sometimes I feel, you know how they are, girls. Guys, y'all know how y'all are. Y'all can just put it out there and it just be hanging out there like, what's up? It's just be like, what's up? That's what I said. And I am Daphne Buchanan. I am your host of Echoes of Embracing Love. And the series or episode that we were reviewing was When Love Hurts. Take a look. And I will see you on the next episode. Have a great night.